for Leaders Press, an experienced professional in the publishing industry with over 15 years of expertise in developing extensive customer, sales, support, management, and executive experience. In this live interview, we'll dive into the world of hybrid publishing in 2023. We will definitely try to understand what that means during the interview and explore how writing a book can help businesses thrive, the main motivations for corporate leaders to write a book, tips for managing both book authoring and day-to-day operations, and much more. Get ready to take note as Andrew shares his insights and knowledge on how to successfully navigate the world of publishing and turn your book into a profitable business tool. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sabir. I'm very excited to be here today.
So before we get started, I always ask my guests to kind of introduce themselves, their backstory. You look like a superhero. So I want to know, Spider-Man, what's your backstory?
Well, I was going out with my girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, to the spider exhibit. No. I actually came from an educational background. For many years, I was a teacher, but I also had worked in sales, and I had prior to that, my degrees were in history and literature. So when the opportunity came, it really came from just very randomly. My ex-wife had told me that Alinka, our CEO of Leaders Press, was looking for somebody to handle their sales department. I'm like, well, I'll try a startup. I know a little bit about literature and publishing. So I went into it almost completely new to everything and helped build this company up. And we built it from where we were doing 2 or 3 books every year to now to the point where we're doing more than 50. And if everything goes right, we should do 100 in 2023.
So here's the thing. My bad sources tell me nothing has changed in publishing over the past 20 years. No, I'm not. That's why I said bad sources.
Yeah.
One industry that I can point to that has completely changed over the past 20 years is the publishing industry. How you publish, the mediums you publish, what does it mean publishing? So just from your POV in the past decade that you have been involved in this, what kinds of changes that you have seen, and what kind of changes do you see coming up also now? I mean, one of the biggest questions that's being hitting me. I mean, I can tell you, I'm a board member at a local charter school, and one of the big topics that we had in one of our board meetings was how does ChatGPT change when students actually plagiarize their content from AI? Yeah. So ChatGPT is affecting even education. So I'm sure that you have heard of that, several examples of where people spent a weekend producing children's stories, and then they use ChatGPT with Midjourney to produce images as well as text, put it together, and start selling it on Amazon as a Kindle book, a children's Kindle book. So there are tremendous amount of upheaval happening right now. But I just want to understand, like, from your perspective, the past decade, and where do you see things going forward now?
Yeah, well, it's the fundamental change in publishing. Most of it, from what I actually deal with, is in nonfiction. Fiction publishing is still pretty much the same if you're talking about the traditional publishing side, although self-publishing has definitely made an impact on the fiction side. But self-publishing has made a gigantic impact on the nonfiction side. Because at this point, anyone can make a book and can get a book released on Amazon. That's the real deal breaker for traditional publishing. That's the real game changer that has come in, is that it's so easy now for someone to create their own content and then to be able to put their content out there. The issue becomes when you do that, the market begins to become saturated, because now what you used to have was kind of the traditional publishers as gatekeepers, as in they decided what was published. They picked you. You didn't pick them. You had to ask them. You had to get the literary agent. The whole process that people think of when they think of publishing, they think of, I write the book, I get an agent, I send the manuscript to publishers. A publisher buys it and it gets published. that used to be how it worked. And when they did that, there were fewer books, clearly. Now with self-publishing, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can put out a book. So you now have a lot of books in the market, which means that it's really easy to get lost. I mean, that's the thing. When you have thousands of books out there on selling, how do you know which one is the right one for you? How do you know which one to pick? How do you know which one to read? So that's where hybrid publishing comes in, which is what we do, where we are in a way like self-publishing, as in, when you come to us, you're guaranteed to have your book out. It's going to be done as long as you're able to actually, use our processes, work with us, and produce the book. The difference between hybrid publishing and self-publishing is really, I like to describe it as you're hiring a staff. So with hybrid publishing, you're bringing in experts to help you write the book. You're bringing in experts to help you edit it. You're bringing in experts, importantly, to help you market it. And that, I think, is where most people fall down when they think about publishing, is like, it's the marketing side. It's the whole step of, you can get a book out now. It's the step of, can I get that book into the hands of my reader? Can I get it to the person that I want to actually see it? And that becomes, I think, the biggest challenge for new authors. But that's the big change. The big change, the thing that kind of blew up the industry, has been the fact, much like ChatGPT, or I know there's also Stable Diffusion, the AI art, those things are coming in. They're kind of democratizing writing and democratizing art. Well, self-publishing democratized publishing in that way. It gave it to the masses.
There's controversy also, right, around ChatGPT. Like, and when it has to do with writing, one of the things that I think that one aspect of like creativity will start to die away, in my opinion. Some people might use a tool like ChatGPT to enhance their creativity, to help with their process of creativity, and that's good. Use it as a tool, right? But if you're replacing your creativity by saying, "Oh, 100% ChatGPT should give me everything that I need," then over time laziness sets in, and then now you're not thinking on your own at all. It's similar to like, if you remember, like I think you and I are very similar in age, right? When we went to school, I don't know if that's happened to you. I studied in New York when I was a kid. When you pulled out your calculator to do math, use it for your math exams or math test or math class, you would fail the class because that you were cheating. You were considered cheating. Now, my kids graduated college now, but my kids are, when they were going through high school and junior high, one of the tools I needed to buy for them regularly to use in class was calculator.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is, the challenge with that is, now you're not thinking, you cannot do mental math. My kids cannot do mental math at all. Yet you throw numbers at me, I can add them, subtract them, divide, and stuff like that. I can do it. Generally speaking, I can be in the right vicinity. They're nowhere in the ball field, when they have to do mental math, But similarly in writing, I think that when it comes to creative writing and when it comes to that kind of stuff, I believe that might be taken away from a lot of people because laziness will set in. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely, with ChatGPT and with Stable Diffusion, both of them, I've heard a lot of controversy about them both because, it's exactly as you say. If you use AI art to enhance something that you create, that's that's kind of what it's almost meant to do. It's meant to help, but what people are actually doing with it is that they're making stuff on its own. They're actually letting it just do its own thing, where they're not doing nothing more than typing in search strings. I think there's a lot of danger in when you have things like those kind of programs to take away from people's voice, to take away from the creativity, to start to begin to make everything very mechanical, very technical. I think that's the fear people have when they look at hybrid publishing. When they think about that, it's like, oh my, wait, if I'm going to go and I'm going to have somebody write my book for me, I'm not going to lose part of myself. Does my voice get erased? by engaging a professional writer or a ghostwriter, however you want to use the term. I think it's the opposite in our business. I actually feel that our process is the way that we do things. We guard against that. That is our fear, and is that when we actually engage with an author, is that we do too much of just stitching together the transcripts and having less voice. That's that person's unique outlook and unique take. So with us, we make sure that we engage them very heavily. We do a very much a back and forth conversational process, and we engage them with getting them in the editorial process, making sure that that voice is absolutely theirs. So there's ways to do it in which, if you have a back and forth and you have an engagement process, to keep your creativity, to keep the voice, to keep the soul, as you will, of the material we're trying to produce. But yeah, when you're starting to get into the more technical aspects, I think there's a way to go too far. And when we start to actually begin writing our books purely with ChatGPT, when we start to create nothing but purely AI generated material, there's a lot of soullessness in it. And I don't necessarily think it's entirely a good thing the way that we're heading in that direction on it.
So given hybrid publishing, is there a success story? Because one of the things I read off in your bio was that you're using that for writing and publishing a book. You're using it as a tool for your business to thrive and for your business to succeed by using book as a tool. Basically, almost it becomes a sales tool for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could share a success story of a business that did that through you guys.
A place called Leaders Press. I will share a couple of success stories, but I will start with that because we did what we do for our clients. That's how we got here. We started by producing a book called two of them. One of them called Write and Grow Rich, the other one called Outsource Your Book. That essentially were test beds for what we were going to do for our clients. They were lead generators. They were magnets that we put out there to tell our story, to tell about what we do, how we do it. And we generated leads from those by people reading the book and coming to us and knocking on our door. We learned how to do that. And we even did that internally. I mean, I'll toot my own horn. My own book, Don't Buy the Watch, was something that we produced internally, again, as a lead generator for myself, because I've had business that has come to me through the fact that I have that book. So we knew that we could do it because we did it ourselves. Some of the best success stories that we have, we got one of them right behind me. I can see it over my shoulder. Why They Buy. That's Tom Fedro's book. And that's a perfect encapsulation of somebody that came to us. Tom had been working on that book for 10 years and had never gotten anywhere with it. He's the CEO of the U.S. branch of Paragon. So anybody that's familiar with Paragon, they're a very large business. They are a data protection company. They're international, and the U.S. branch is fairly significant. And so Tom negotiates multi-million-dollar deals with the likes of Toshiba, HP, Dell, and Apple. And when he came to us, he said, I need this book badly, because what I need this book to do is I have to replace my business card. I have to be in a position where if I'm going to go into a boardroom and I'm going to negotiate a multi-million-dollar sale, I don't want to be introducing myself. I don't want to be explaining what I do. I don't want to be explaining my methodology. I want them to have already read my book so that they're 3 steps ahead of where they would normally be, and I can get right to the negotiation. And that was Tom's goal. And when he came to us, the cost is significant. I mean, you can take a look at our website. We're not the restaurant that hides your prices in the menu. So the cost is significant. But Tom said something to me then that we still say to potential clients, and that is, Tom looked at it and said, there's a lot of cost in this, but if I land one client from this that I didn't get otherwise, that wouldn't have come to me, that I land solely because of this book, I mean, I'm whole. And then from that point on, everything is gravy. It's all, including, what you don't really make a lot of money in royalties, but he said, including royalties, which I know it won't be a lot, but all of that is coming to me from me doing nothing but having had the book out there. And that was it. That was actually something that he did. I believe the client he landed was Toshiba. Don't quote me on that. He did actually land a client. He did actually land a client right after the release of his book, and he has been building off of that from there on out. And so we looked at Tom and we said we can do this for a lot of people. It's not just Tom that we can pull this off for. And it was so important to him too, because like I say, he spent 10 years trying to put that thing together. 10 years. When he came to us, it was done in 10 months.
Wow.
So that was the difference between, getting a staff, having an accountability partner, having somebody to sit with him and be able to put it out. It's taking that timeline down and then being able to actually then begin to use that book for whatever you want it for.
So after the book is written, right, whether you wrote it yourself or you worked with Leaders Press and you put out that book, next comes promotion and marketing of that book, right?
Right.
And I'll share some story with you here. Over the past, throughout my career, I've always had authors come to me. They have published their book with name brand publishers, right? Name brand publishers, right? Business books, a lot of them, right? They get to that point, the book is published, is ready to launch, and the publisher typically does its normal thing that every traditional publisher does. They book certain reading and stuff like that, where the person actually has to travel to a Barnes and Noble, sit there, and his audience comes in, or the book is marketed so that people come in. He does the reading, and then they get an autographed copy. They buy it from there. And so on and so forth. So that's your typical way of doing that. And what shocks me is that I've been doing this throughout my career, so I can tell you that they don't utilize all the mechanisms that exist today,
Right.
Digital and social media, right? And email marketing and everything related to that, right? They don't even utilize any of that stuff. And then that's why they're coming to me, and the author goes like, you know what? My publisher doesn't do any of that stuff. I need you to help me launch this product from a digital and social standpoint. And I work with them to actually make that happen, because and sometimes it's like pulling quite a lot from the publisher, because they hold the strings. I don't do anything there.
Yep.
I cannot do anything unless, the author says that, you know what, this guy is working for me. You need to work with him to make those kinds of things happen, right? Whether it's optimizing Amazon, a landing page, a book page, promoting it on whether it's TikTok or being on podcasts, stuff like that. All of those things, I craft that entire design in order for them. I only work with select few authors. That's not my main line of work, but that's what I kind of do with them. So in this hybrid model, right, that you're promoting, right, and that's how Leaders Press works. How does that marketing and promotion work in your case?
Yeah. With us, we integrate it. And first of all, I want to make a quick correction. It was not Why They Buy that Tom Fedra wrote, Next Level Selling. Sorry, I'm seeing David Fleece's book right behind me, and
the one with the red cover.
Yeah, that's David Fleece's. Yeah, Next Level Selling is Tom Fedra's book. But anyway, so traditional publishers. I want to briefly talk about what the differences are between us when it comes to marketing. Traditional publishers, no, they don't always help you. You're right. And a lot of that is entirely by design. Depending on who you are, when you work with a traditional publisher, they will vary how much support they give you based on what they feel like your potential is and what the book's potential is. So if Elon Musk walks in to Penguin and does a book deal with them, I'm just throwing that random traditional publisher out. They're going to give him whatever he wants. They're going to give him an advance. They're going to give him support. They're going to market it. They're going to have an entire PR team they're going to hook him up with that's going to get him connected to everything. He's not going to have to lift a finger on his own side. However, if you or I go in to Penguin and we're writing a book, and they're probably not going to give us any of that. They're going to say, cool, we'll give you an advance. You're going to get the book out, but all the rest of that's up to you. Everything else, you got to do it. So what we do with hybrid publishing is we give as much support as we can on the front end. We help with that launch. So when we're talking about marketing and hybrid publishing, we're talking about being able to get it in front of the audiences that need to see it. I'll give an example. It's the other Next Level book. There are 2 Next Level books we did. And the other one's Next Level Cybersecurity by Cy Huda. And when Cy wrote his own book, we did not ghostwrite Cy's book. So it was a book that he came to us with. We took a look at it. We vetted it. We agreed that it was very good, and it is very good, and chose to publish it. And when we marketed that book, what we were looking at those during the editorial process, we were trying to make sure that we could find the areas to market it that would make it pop on searchable places like Amazon, iBooks, wherever you might be able to take a look. So we looked at Cy's book. He wanted to be number 1 in network security. That was a huge goal of his. It's a big category on Amazon, so that's a tall ask. But when we looked at the book, we found a lot of relevant subcategories that Cy was writing in that we could then launch the book in. So it all became about that, having the launch and the promotion tied together, connected together to get it seen in smaller categories like viruses and malware or keyboard logging. Those are some of the ones that we worked on that Cy's book discussed. And when his book hit number 1 in those subcategories, we were able to advertise that, and we did other shout outs and other marketing launches. We did ad spends that said, hey, he's a number 1 Amazon bestseller. We didn't say exactly what category it was in, but it got interest, and it got people looking at it. And all of a sudden, he was number 1 in network security. It wasn't very long, and he was number 1 in network security for 18 months. Because the other side of that was to make sure that the qualities of the book is good, to make sure that, if you have a bad book, yeah, you might be able to get it seen for a couple hours on Amazon, but you're not going to get any reviews. There's not going to be any momentum behind it. It'll eventually fade and fall away. So that's a difference between us and traditional publishers, is we're planning on the marketing from the very beginning. In fact, the very first question we ever ask any potential author is, what do you want this book to do for you? Because once we get that answer, even before the book is written, we can start to construct a plan of how are we going to get this seen? How are we going to get it marketed? Which is why we've had such great success, not just at hitting Amazon, but hitting Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller lists as well. We have quite a few of our books that have hit the Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller lists. And what we find is that for our authors, hitting those bestseller lists is primarily what they look for, because that's what they can then use to segue that into speaking engagements, writing, speaking gigs, public appearances, things like that. Once you've hit the Wall Street Journal list, that's something that you can easily put on your press kit and can send out and say, hey, book me for the podcast, Sabir. I'm a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. I mean, obviously, you're going to want to hear what that person has to say in many cases. So those are some of the things that we do to support it. For long-term support, we will provide help connecting people. So if you're looking for a specific podcast, or you're looking for someone to work with to help you with public speaking, to even learn how to public speak, we have those connections that we build through joint ventures that we then say, okay, we've gotten you through the publishing process, but now here are places that you can go for affiliates that we worked with in the past that we know can help someone support their book for long term. So we then provide you the information and the handshake and the connections to continue to work on that. Traditional publishers typically won't even do that. I mean, sometimes they will. Sometimes they'll say, hey, give X or Y or Z a call, and they might be able to help you. But in many cases, they just don't. And it's, again, because at that point, they're really, the difference between hybrid and traditional, since you're paying us as hybrid, you're our client. I mean, we want to have customer satisfaction. We want you to be happy. Your success is our success. I like to look at traditional publishing as you actually become their employee in many cases when you're contracting with a traditional publisher, because again, most nonfiction authors are going to get contracts that are extremely favorable to the publisher and not really to the author, including rights. I mean, you have to sign away a lot of your control, a lot of your intellectual property in some cases. So that is a huge difference between the two of us, is how much support they give and why we have the incentive to give support, whereby a traditional publisher wouldn't necessarily always have incentive.
You know, with several authors that I've actually helped them from this side of it, you know, from the social and digital standpoint, one of the things that I notice is, like in that example of network security author, what was his name?
Sai
Huda. Okay, so Sai Huda, what I come across is there are two types. One, they have a very strong following on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. Like they have their blog, they write regularly. That's what their passion is. They want to share that knowledge and stuff like that. And now they're thinking about somehow packaging that experience into a book, right? They have a platform, right? And they have invested in that platform, their personal brand platform, right? Versus another person who has not done any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you look at their LinkedIn, they have not even uploaded their image. I'm talking about one of those guys, right? Let alone doing anything on Instagram or Twitter or any of the other platforms. Even on LinkedIn, they barely have anything up. Or they look nice at a wedding, so they took that photo and they put it up on LinkedIn, you know?
Right.
So no investment at all. And then they come to me to help them promote this, because the thing is, I don't have, and from my perspective, I don't have that platform. They don't have it. So the only thing I could do is find people who have very similar interests to that topic that they have written the book on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can see if they are interested in that book, right? And find a paid media audience, basically a paid ad audience like that. I cannot really leverage cohorts from their followers and anything like that they have built their credibility or online persona. Nothing like that exists. So how important, I know that it's important, but how important is it for today's authors to have that kind of a social media and digital media platform when they're thinking of writing a book? And
I think
how can you help?
it's invaluable. It really is. It really is important. We do help. We can't make a LinkedIn for you. So you know that is a little bit of an area of opportunity. I have never run into someone that had no LinkedIn, but I'm sure it could happen. And we do have connections with people that would help you build it out. But for the rest of that, yeah, we're helping our authors when they're working with us. First of all, we're setting them up with a landing page. So we're giving them at least some social media connection that they can have. A landing page is always important, because once you have something that's connected to your book, that's connected to your brand, that's basically where you send everybody and you direct everybody. So if you have your LinkedIn, you have your Instagram, your whatever, however you share your media, that is what you should be sharing and connecting out. We highly suggest that our authors during the process, because when you're working with us, you're usually working with us for probably about 18 months. So when you're with us, you have a project director, and that project director, partly what that project director is going to be doing is looking at, you know, what does your social media footprint look like? How big is it? Where are there areas of opportunity that we can give you suggestions and help you? We can't set everything up for you, except other than the things that we do internally, like the landing pages and material. But we definitely give advice to our authors of things that they need, gaps they need to fill, to make sure that their book is out there, and make sure that there are many different avenues in which they can share their book, or in which their book can even bring in business to it. Because that's the other thing. Your book's a fishing lure. Your book is out there. The goal of that book is to bring you business. The goal of that book is to get people interested. So you want people that have even read your book to then be able to find the ways to engage you, ways that you can do that, and ways that we do that. Like a simple, really easy hack with a book is to put a scannable QR code in the first couple of pages that link you back to a landing page, or link you back to your social media, link you to LinkedIn, however you want to do it. And we put that early in the book, so that even if someone goes on Amazon and just looks at the book preview and says, you know, I don't necessarily want to spend 200 pages or time reading 200-page book, but this sounds really interesting. This guy is exactly who or girl is exactly who I want to work with. So I'm going to take my phone. I'm just going to scan that QR code right off my monitor. And when you do that, then even without making a sale, you can bring people into your social media. So that's why it is vital to have at this point some kind of online presence that can serve as just a way to actually have a functional funnel for people that are coming in and trying to actually engage with you.
One thing that I have, there are so many articles on this topic, and I just want you to dispel some misconceptions, right?
Mhm.
About self-publishing. I don't know where those articles come from. I'm guessing it's from traditional publishers,
Yeah.
There are misconceptions about self-publishing, and there's a lot of poo-poo on it, and there's a lot of negative feedback on the types of people who do self-publishing and things of that nature, right? So
Yeah.
what are some of those misconceptions, and why there are misconceptions?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is a bit of the old boys club. Traditional publishers hate self-publishing because it affects their bottom line. And it's and you can even talk. You will if you talk to other people in the publishing business, even people that are in traditional publishing. If you get them off the record, they'll all say that. I mean, they'll say, "Yeah, we know it is a old publishing is very stuffy, very conservative, and very much does not like anything happening that steps on its toes." So you're going to get some misinformation from that area just because that's straight out. It's in their best business interest to give that misinformation. They're protecting their own brand. Now, what misconceptions do people have? People have misconceptions that self-publishing is low quality. People have misconceptions that books that are self-published could not have been traditionally published otherwise. That the only reason that
They
people
got
use
rejected.
self-publishing, people that use self-publishing are doing it because they have to, not because they want to. I mean, so you're going so that by its very nature, if you think of it that way, then self-publishing is where you're going to find all the trash. You're going to find the stuff that wouldn't have fit otherwise. That couldn't be further from the truth. The problem is there's some truth in it. And when there's some truth in it, then you can always point to examples. But it's definitely not the entire truth. And really, I find that the biggest problem with self-publishing isn't that it is filled with low quality. It's just that there's so much out there that it is extremely difficult to make a book, the self-published, stand out against other books that are self-published. That is a conception that is true. It is very difficult to make your self-published book stand out. But yeah, you'll hear when you read about it, that self-publishing it's a cheat, it's a hack, it's a quick way. You're spending money to do something that you actually should be paid to do, which is a misconception that's heavily pushed by traditional publishing, because there's a conception that when you traditionally publish, you're being paid by the publisher. That's not really true. They're giving you an advance, and in many cases nowadays, a lot of authors don't even burn through that advance off of their first book or their only book, however they do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's an author in the business field, right? I actually admire the guy. He's really good, right? I'm sure that you've heard of the name Russell Brunson.
Yes, yeah.
ClickFunnels is the name of the company that he created. Some of his books are actually in the top selling books in marketing books. Like Expert Secrets is, I think, one of his books. And if you read that book, you really like what you're reading. It points you to go into and test out ClickFunnels, right? But it gives you all that advice for free, basically, in the book. You're pretty much bought into why you want to do this, and then you go on to clickfunnels.com, you sign up for your trial, and you start your thing, whatever that thing you want to do. You're a chiropractor, you want to set up a funnel there. If you are a software developer or consultant or whatever, real estate person, you would take action right after that. But if I look at that book, right, I don't know if that book, I think it's a self-published book, I believe. Several of his books were self-published. Can a book like that's like, probably it's at number 1 or in top 10 sellers on Amazon, can that book be a Wall Street Journal bestseller or New York
Yeah.
Times bestseller because it's not a published through traditional selling?
Yeah, absolutely. I
You
mean,
can.
it's a very, very simple answer. Yes. And it happens very often. Happens with a lot of our books. I mean, we've had several Wall Street Journal bestsellers ourselves. We have not had a New York Times. It's harder to debate New York Times because the New York Times is an editorialist. It is not an actual aggregate of sales. They pick the books that are on the New York Times. So it's what the New York Times staff likes, which means any book technically can get on there, even a book that hasn't sold very many copies. So there's good and bad for that, for the person that's thinking that they want to have their book show up on that. But yeah, very easily those books can sell enough copies to hit the lists and can get enough attention. I mean, Chicken Soup for the Soul was self-published. So, and that was one of the most successful books of all time. Yeah, I think Tony Robbins self-publishes his books. I know Dan Cashel self-published his that he does. So, you know, there's quite a few people that have had a lot of success building brands, that have done it off of that kind of book.
So if you're an established author like John Grisham, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I love his books. I read it all the time. Any new book he puts out, I read it. You know. For fun. You know, that's my fun side of me, you know. If he decided to go self-publish, do you think that he will be as successful in selling that book compared to all the other books he has sold through traditional publishing?
John Grisham probably would be. I would think that it would be, if you have that name and you're John Grisham, yeah, he wouldn't have any problem. It's harder when you talk about fiction. It's much more difficult to get the kind of success you need in self-publishing in fiction as opposed to nonfiction. Fiction, you have to sell lots of copies in fiction. Your royalties are so important to a fiction author if you're trying to make money off of your book. So self-publishing is much more difficult for fiction. And in fact, some of the negative misconceptions that people have about self-publishing really comes from fiction self-publishing. It comes from the fact that, you know, anybody could write a story, put it out, and self-publish it through fiction. So I would not be so bullish on someone that's a brand new author that's writing a fiction book and has never published before about that book actually being able to be as successful as they want it to be. Now, that's not impossible. And we've even published a few fiction books, and we have had great success with them when we have done it. But yeah, it is more difficult if you're going to go that angle.
Yeah. So how can authors, like, let's say I did self-publish a book, right? I didn't really market it that much. I just put it out there. I think I sold a few copies, you know. I didn't really, but because at that time I was extremely busy with my work, my own kind of consulting work and brand work and stuff like that. If I work on a second book, right, how can I leverage that book to create additional streams of income and build up my brand even further than where I am right now?
Yeah, it's all about what we were talking about before. It's all about just making sure that you have that book that is designed from the very first minute to be integrated into everything that you do. That to come at it from the perspective of having an end goal and an end state of the book in mind makes very significant changes to how the book is actually produced. So when you're coming into that and saying, I want the second book, that's the easiest thing to do, is just start with saying, all right, this is going to support my podcast. This is going to support my social media. This is going to support my public speaking. This is going to support everything I'm doing. So I need to know what the content's going to be and which way the content is going to be structured in such a way to maximize that. So that even if I don't sell very many copies of it, that I will get significant return off of the copies that I sell. So you can sit there and say, well, you know, I only really need to sell about 3,000 or 4,000 copies of this book to achieve the kind of goals that I'm looking for. That's an important thing to do. It's like, how much of this do I need to have out there? How many books do I need to sell? What kind of book is it going to even be? Is it going to be a full book? Is it going to be 250 pages that you're primarily directing people to buy off Amazon or directing them to buy at a store? Or is it going to be a short book? Is it going to be like 25, 30 pages? Is this going to be something that I'm going to stuff in my briefcase and take into a board meeting and just hand out? And I don't really care if I sell a single copy of it on Amazon, and I don't care if I sell a single copy out of a bookstore. I have this book to give away and bring in income streams. So there's so many questions you have to ask yourself before you can answer the how am I going to be able to put this together and fit it into my business. And what you're going to find is that if you have 10 different people that are writing 10 different books, you're going to have 10 different answers to that question. Everybody's different. And, how do I help somebody like Po Chung, who is the co-founder of DHL International, a multi-billion-dollar business, and who's extremely well-known in his space and extremely well-known in what he does, as opposed to what am I going to do to help somebody like Mark Nuruddin, who was our first book. They'll give my shout out to Pocket Mentor, which is behind me. Mark Nuruddin is well known in his industry, but he sells outdoor grills. It's not necessarily a household name. He doesn't have as many connections. You approach those two different kinds of people differently because one person is known, one person is not. You need to actually structure the book in such a way that you're educating the people about who you are as much as anything else.
So I started the journey, right? I wrote this book, the first one. I put it up on, self-published because I know the platforms really well. I know how to work with KDP and all of those platforms. So I put the book up, right? And I know that a lot of people who self-publish, they do that, right? In the hybrid publishing, what are the benefits of working with a hybrid publishing company like yours, and how does it help the authors succeed? How is it different than what I would do? Like if I created my manuscript and I got it edited, I hired somebody from Upwork or Fiverr, they helped me edit it, we got it to a place, turned it into an ebook, and I made it publishing ready. I uploaded it into KDP, and now I'm praying that it sells a copy.
It is very different, and I have to apologize for the lawn work outside. I'm pretty sure that's coming through on my audio.
No, we're good.
Okay, so the primary differences there. I mean, when you're doing self-publishing, you're in control of all of it. You control KDP. You're going to be on Amazon. Very seldom when you're self-publishing are you going to have a book in a bookstore. It can happen, but it does not happen very often. So when you're coming to hybrid publishing, from just the sheer technical side of everything, you're not having to handle any of that. We don't use KDP. We use traditional printers. We use LSE Communication to Sheridan. We use traditional distribution models. So we're partnered with Simon & Schuster. So we actually get books into bookstores. So your book will be in a bookstore when you come with us. Those things are much easier with a hybrid publisher because, again, you just don't have to do anything. We do all of that work. Our relationships that we build and the print orders and all of that, that's what we're handling. The best advantage, though, of working with a hybrid publisher over self-publishing is really just to have that partner. It's really just to have first of all, you got your editorial staff taken care of, so you know you're going to be able to edit it. You've got the help writing the book if you want it, which most of our authors do actually want to have help writing the book. So when we put these together, it's just having that help, having someone to suggest content, to give you guides about what kind of material you might be leaving out that we feel would be better to help people find you in your funnel. The reach that you get by being able to get in the bookstores, getting into libraries, that's another thing that we offer. Foreign rights, another thing that we offer. These are all things that people have to do themselves if they go self-publishing, if you want to do any of those. When you're talking to a hybrid publisher, we're taking care of as much as we can on the creation and launch of the book as possible and take as much of that burden off of our authors as we can.
So as a nonfiction author, right, is it a in that case, is that a zero-sum game, meaning that, I invest in it, all I want to do is I want to get the money I invested, I just need it back, that's it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to become a millionaire just off of the book. Maybe the offshoots of it, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody make money in publishing books?
Yes. Now, but they don't do it necessarily through royalties, and that's the important part. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I'll do a little bit of a deep dive into it now. So the way that you make money in nonfiction, again, this is nonfiction. Fiction is a different animal, so I'm not even going to touch on that. Nonfiction, the way that you make money primarily is through building the back end. It's primarily through getting the book into hands and creating offshoots that are going to create revenue streams for you. It's not, you shouldn't be looking at it from the perspective of, I need to sell X number of copies to make my investment back, because it will almost never happen. It does sometimes. I know several of our authors that have made their money on royalties. I'm not going to disclose their financials, but I know that there are many that have. But I know that most of them haven't. And I know that most of them, though, have made their money because they continue to come back to us and they continue to be happy with us because they made their money through the non-traditional, I guess you would call them, means of being able to integrate that into their business and into their funnel, which is why many of our authors are coaches, consultants, and salespeople. They're customer-facing businesses that can very easily be turned around into something that's a direct revenue stream for somebody. But no, don't think that you're going to make money on royalties, because even with hybrid publishing, and now hybrid publishing, you get a 90-10 split. With us, others, it may vary, but even with hybrid publishing, a 90-10 split on royalties is a very small trickle, even selling lots of books, because there's so many things that take pieces of the pie. Amazon takes a chunk of it. The printers take a chunk of it. Our distributor takes a chunk of it. So our little 10% is small compared to what others are going to take out by the time that the actual sale price of the book is calculated, the wholesale cost, and then the few cents will finally find its way to the author at the end of that. But I wouldn't let that discourage you, because it is coming at it from the mindset of knowing that when you're writing at the very beginning, and knowing that my goal in this is not necessarily to sell 50 million copies and have this make millions of dollars in direct sales. That could happen. I mean, and there's almost no way to know when that happens. Some books will just do that. It just happens that it creates the right amount of momentum. It hits the right message with people, and it sells, and it just keeps on selling. And we've had books that have done that have just been surprising how many copies that they come out with. We didn't expect Si's book to be #1 in network security for 18 months. We loved that it was. But that wasn't something when we talked to Si. It's like, Si, we guarantee you that book's going to be #1 in network security. Not only that, it's going to be there for over a year. You can't predict that.
I mean, that sounds like Hollywood, you know.
Yeah,
your
much.
book is going to be a million, you know. So you're telling me that book authors don't drive Lamborghinis? Is that what you're telling me?
Some of them do, and that's just it.
No, just because of the book. I don't mean of the offshoot business.
Very rarely, nonfiction authors are very rarely driving a Lamborghini because because of the sales of the book. No.
So, storytelling, right?
Yeah.
I've come across books that I have read, I have reread, and I have reread them over the past 20 years, and I own it in my Audible. I even bought a printed copy of it, and I can tell you even the titles off my top of my head. Regardless of how technical a book could be, that network security book, I can tell you, I do have IT background. I can tell you it could be very dry, extremely dry, right? Very technical. Yeah. Why is storytelling so important to connect with your audience?
Well, you want them to read the book. I mean, it's really just that simple. You want somebody to begin on page 1, and in a 200-page book, you want them to stop on page 200. You don't want them to stop on page 10 and say, gosh, that was really dry. And then it ends up on the bedside, and then it ends up on the bookshelf, and then it ends up gone. So you want to be able to get people engaged. Your book will be more successful if it's better. And that is absolutely something that we learned, that quality is very integral to whether or not people are actually going to read that thing once you got it in their hand. And storytelling is the easiest way to hack that. You know, hacking the writing phase is something that we use internally in our operations department. We talk about it a lot. And the way that you hack the writing phase, the way that you produce a great book is by producing great content, and by producing great content, you have to produce a great story. You have, even in nonfiction, you're still telling a story. Everything's storytelling. The only difference between nonfiction and fiction is that you're making it up in fiction. In nonfiction, you're telling a real story, and you can embellish it. But yeah, that's what you're doing right there. And the more that you put that into a way that's going to relate to readers, the better it's going to be. Now, you'll run into technical books that you can't, there's no way around it. I mean, there will be books that you're going to put together that will be, and yeah, they'll be in things like information technology. We've had a couple of books that are in investing that are fairly dry, a couple of books in realty that are fairly dry. And we've had them. And the way that we typically do those is when we think about those dry books, we talk to somebody and there's no way to avoid making one. We will sometimes talk to them about, well, what if we do this in 2 books? What if we have a book that's out there that's a very heavily storytelling based? It's something that's about you, that brands you, that's selling you. And what if we do that first, and then we do your dry book? And we did that with one of our authors, Kristen Cripps. She's a good example of that. So she started with us. She wanted a workbook on real estate. Absolutely needed one on real estate. Wanted something directly that she could do that was completely connected to her business. But we knew it was going to be dry. She knew it was going to be dry. She didn't even really want to write it that much, but she needed to have it. So we backed up and said, well, heck, why don't we talk about you? Make a book about your story. So that's why we came up with her first book, Shepreneur, because I mean, even on the call when she was talking to me, she said, yeah, all I ever hear are men at conferences that say, so did your husband leave you this job or the company? or did your dad give this to you? Or you know, you taking over for your brother after he's retired? And she's like, heck no, I worked 90 hours a week as a waitress and a bartender and saved up my scraps to do this job. So I'm like, heck, there you go, Kristen. You got your book right there. Let's start with the bartender. Don't start with the workbook. Start with the bartending. And that's what she did. She wrote a great book that talked about her story. So I feel storytelling is just, it's integral to any author and being able to get their book of interest to its reader.
Yeah, actually, you reminded me of a book that I had read, and I made the mistake of reading the dry version of the book.
Yeah.
And it's a very popular book. It's Warren Buffett's most favorite book by Benjamin Graham, right? Mm-hmm. The dry book title I remember. The fun one I forgot, and I don't want to mess it up. So the dry one is called Security Analysis by Benjamin Graham. It's all about investing and stuff like that, value investing and stuff like that. And that book is this thick with charts, with numbers, telling you exactly how to look at things from a value investing, because he was the father of Benjamin Graham was a father of value investing. And then when that book was published, only people who were extremely technical analysis and investors, they understood that book to be very valuable. But the common person who wanted to get into investing could have benefited from it. That was the goal. Nobody could understand that. So after that, the other common book was written. I forgot the name of the title of the book. I'm sure that we can Google it and find out. It's like Think and Grow Rich type of a book. You know, it's similar to that in that same class. But that, even though that one is by Napoleon Hill, it's a different book. You know?
Oh yeah, we're very familiar with it. But we cribbed its name a little with one of our books.
But the other book that I'm talking about, there are 2 versions of the book. One version is the simpler, consumer-friendly storytelling type of a book that any consumer, regular American consumer, would understand, versus the security analysis book, which is a heavily technical. It's a Bible like this thick, you know. So it kind of reminded me of. I mean, in your case, you went the other way, like. Instead of talking about these dry topics, talk about the shepreneur, right? About her life and about her struggles and challenges and her philosophy. That was a very different approach. But I can tell you that there was another approach that was done a while ago where a very dry book was actually simplified into very simple English so that everybody could understand it, you know. And it has been a bestseller for decades now, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much can be done just by making it fun. I mean, I learned that as a teacher. Like one of the students, they'll participate a lot more in your class if you're entertaining and you make the subject fun for them. So same thing with the book.
Is there a situation where an author comes to you, because we're learning from you right now, there are three different models, right? At least the top ones:
Yeah.
self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and traditional publishing, right?
Yeah.
Is there a situation like where a specific author would fit a specific business model, wouldn't fit into, or publishing model, right? Would fit into one publishing model, and you would say, you know what, the hybrid model is not for you, or you should go self-publish first, or you know what, I think for this one, I think you should consider traditional publishing.
There are times that happens. It's really not often, because with hybrid publishing, we have an extremely high confidence that we could produce anything. Because our confidence is our confidence in our team and our staff. And we have an internal staff. We have people that we work with all the time. We don't use a freelance model. So our people that we work with, we hired, we trust them. And I feel like we could pretty much almost produce anything. There will be times, though, when someone comes to us, like let's say with a completed manuscript that we can't really work with, either so wildly out of what we do typically, or it needs so much work that we would basically have to rewrite it, and the author doesn't want to rewrite it. So in those cases, we can't really do it, and we would suggest that they go self-publishing in that situation. We don't often suggest traditional publishing, just simply because it's so hard to get into it. And I can not particularly think of any time in which I have told somebody, you absolutely need to just go ahead and go and traditionally publish this book. It's something that some of our authors have chosen to do after they have worked with us and decided they want to actually get it with a different label, which again, that's actually an advantage of working with hybrid publishing, is that you retain all of your rights. Traditional publishing has right sharing. Hybrid publishing does not. You have all the rights. So when you're working with a hybrid publisher, they're only your publisher as long as you want them to be. I mean, once that book is out, you can then go and try to sell it to a traditional publisher if you want to. It's absolutely up to you. Can be done. But it's not something that I recommend that people go to just because it's so darn hard. and I hear so many nightmare stories. We have more people that switch from traditional to us to hybrid than do it the other way around. We have multiple authors that have been published traditionally with major publishers that have quit that model just because it's so unpleasant to deal with, and have come to us just because there's so much less work they have to do.
Wow. Andrew, you have shared so much knowledge about hybrid publishing. I actually personally have learned quite a lot during the show. What is your number one $100,000 advice, insight, recommendation you want to give to authors in 2023 who are just starting their journey in writing and publishing a book?
Yeah, I will give the advice, and it's advice that I'm continually getting right now, because I do my own podcast, Sabir, and I have my own guests on there, most of whom are authors. And when I ask that question, when I hear about that question, I get the same answer all the dang time, and that's just write the dang thing, just do it. Don't wait anymore, because every time I've talked to somebody that is a successful author and I ask them what's your biggest regret, and their biggest regret always is I didn't do it sooner. I waited. I tried to go through all these different things. I tried to write it myself. I thought about self-publishing. I just didn't have the time. I didn't have the ability to put into it. But then once I had it, so many things unlocked, and they keep unlocking. It's the butterfly effect. The butterfly flaps its wings in Africa, and it creates a hurricane in South America. The book is the flapping of those butterflies' wings. All the doors that book will open will stay closed to you forever until it's out there. And right now, because of the way that self-publishing and hybrid publishing works, everybody can get a book. And don't listen to the advice of the traditional publishers or the advice of people that are kind of in the raised pinky champagne glass and say, well, not everyone should have a book. No, I don't believe in that at all. I wouldn't be doing this business if I did believe that. I think that everybody out there has something in them, and I think everybody has value to share. So my advice, $100,000 advice, just go ahead and do the darn thing. Whether you work with us or whether you go and try to find another way to do it. If you're on the fence, if you're thinking about it, do it. You will not regret it.
Andrew, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, audience, for tuning in. We have amazing guests like Andrew coming up in many of our episodes this season. Definitely tune in and keep on checking us out. If you have missed any episode, definitely go to growthbysabir.com/live show. And if you want to reach out to Andrew and you are thinking about publishing a book, definitely check out leaderspress.com. That's where you will find Andrew, and we can talk about publishing a book. Thank you again for tuning in.